Hi everyone, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. You're back at it again with me, Daniela. Hope all is well, hope all is calm. If you guys are obviously watching this video, as you can see from the title, today I'm doing something super different. I'm so excited to be launching my brand new series, New Zealand True Crime Stories. It is a series that I have decided to launch and explore a bit more because I'm super into true crime. Like, I watch true crime stories day and night, and I thought, well, why not spread awareness about the true crime stories that have happened in New Zealand where I live. So I'm so excited to be introducing this brand new series. It is a passion that I love so much. And yes, if you guys want to see more true crime stories, please make sure you guys click the subscribe button. Before I begin, I would just like to share a bit of a disclaimer that I mean absolutely no disrespect to any of the victims that I'll be talking about, nor do I mean any disrespect to any of their families. Everything that I'll be talking about is information that I have gathered from the internet, and I'll basically just be putting it into one video and sharing it with you guys. Also, because this is my very first time, please do forgive me if I am looking down. I'll be looking down at my notes just because there was quite a lot of information to put together and it's quite difficult to obviously memorize it, and I'd rather look down and give you guys accurate information as opposed to trying to think of what I remembered last week and giving you guys false information. So do bear with me, I will get better with time. But yes, also in this video I will include timestamps on the screen, and I will give you guys a warning just because there is rape in this and bludgeoning in this specific true crime story, and for those of you guys who are not into that, or if it will make you uncomfortable, I will be sure to include a timestamp on the screen just to give you guys a warning. So, shall we begin? Born to two British immigrant parents, Hayden had a bit of a rough childhood growing up. He tended to find himself on the wrong end of his father's temper, and his father was quite violent with him. However, his father eventually moved back to Britain and he was raised by his mum. In his teenage years, Hayden moved from foster care to government care to protection homes, which were also known as boy homes, and this is where he experienced both physical and sexual abuse. At the age of 17, Hayden joined the Navy, and then he was later discharged. By 1996, Hayden already had 68 convictions, however none of them were related to violence. Growing up, Hayden suffered from both depression and epilepsy. He became addicted to alcohol and drugs, and at one point he tried to commit suicide 3 different times. However, in the early 1990s, Hayden thought that he should get his life together, get his life back on track. So he decided to check into a rehabilitation centre named the Odyssey House here in Auckland, New Zealand. At the Odyssey House, they treat those who are addicted to drugs and alcohol. Here he met another female, Trudy, who was a single mother and a part-time sex worker who checked into this rehab centre for her addiction of alcohol. Eventually, the two of them checked out, got a flat in the suburb of Avondale, West Auckland, New Zealand, and moved in together. To make ends meet, Trudy continued to work as a part-time sex worker, and Hayden worked a demolition job. I don't know if I pronounced that right. He worked a demolition job. Donna, Trudy's sister, explained the pair as just two ordinary people, really kind. She described Hayden to be someone who was nice, polite, and nobody could say anything mean about him. However, when Hayden turned 34 and Trudy 24, the addiction with drugs and alcohol worsened. On the evening of August 29th, 1996, Trudy walked down to the Lean Jackson Supret in the suburb of Avondale and held the dairy owner, Suresh Patel, at knife point. She demanded he called the police, and she held him hostage for 62 minutes. Eventually the police got there and shot Trudy in her upper shoulder area in order for her to release the knife. She was arrested that evening she was obviously arrested that evening for the robbery she just committed, as well as other crimes that were committed during that day. Trudy was then sentenced to 4.5 years in prison. She was sent away to a women's prison in Christchurch. While she was in hospital because she got shot, Hayden stood by her every single day for the next 2 weeks before she was obviously sent away to the prison. However, once Trudy was gone to prison, Hayden could no longer make ends meet. He could no longer afford to stay in that flat by himself. According to Hayden, the anguish of losing both his flat and Trudy awoke something in him, triggered something in him, a second identity he calls hell. I just want to discuss a little bit about why out of, his 34 years of life, why did this second identity just awake when Trudy was sent away. I genuinely feel like, obviously, like, I'm not a psychologist or anything, but I genuinely feel like, you know, his whole life he had suffered from physical abuse, starting from his father, and, you know, just him moving from government homes to foster homes. He probably felt neglected as a child, that he was not worthy enough. And like I said, by the time it was 1996, which was when he was 35, I believe, he already had 68 convictions. So obviously, him and law, they don't mix, they're not in the same WhatsApp group. I genuinely feel like, you know, he probably saw how the law, the same people who he obviously, like, you know, the same people that, I don't want to say had a controlled his life, but obviously the same people that, you know, not punished him, but obviously people that he just didn't get along with, take his girlfriend away. And I genuinely feel like, you know, that's one of, like, that's a factor that contributed to him just becoming so angry, something triggering him that day. But yeah, that's just my 3 cents that I just added in that, you know, nobody cares about. So fast forward to about 2 months later, on the morning of October 19th, 1996, and when I say morning, like after midnight, so like overnight, so from the 18th overnight to the 19th, so that morning, Hayden was trawling through bars on Karangahape Road, which is known as K Road, looking for, in his own words, like he said, a bee to kill. I don't swear on my channel, but a bee to kill. Shortly before 5 a.m, he stumbled across a 21-year-old female named Natasha Hogan, who was a sex worker on the streets of K Road. They negotiated $60 for oral sex, in which Hayden said, you know, he didn't want to have sex in his car. In fact, he wanted to have sex at the park, in which they agreed. And then eventually the pair walked towards the Simon Street Cemetery and found their way through to Pigeon Park. So let's just talk about Natasha Hogan for a bit and her upbringing. Born in 1975, Natasha Hogan was a middle child to her middle class parents, Raymond Hogan, and her father's name is not, I couldn't find her father's name anywhere. However, when she was born with quite a few irregularities on her face. One of them being she had a disfigurement on her mouth and her jaw, which made it basically impossible for her to eat. She also had knobbly knees, and unfortunately she was a victim of bullying growing up. So in school, every time she was bullied, she would obviously react. However, teachers would describe her to be someone who was disruptive, even though she was just sticking up for herself. However, as the years went by, she eventually had cosmetic surgery and kind of got rid of the disfigurements and the irregularities that made her so insecure growing up. However, at the age of 12, her parents divorced, and this just added more pain to the pain that she was already feeling, because growing up she felt like she needed validation from others. She always felt rejected, and she was just the type of person who just sought acceptance everywhere she went. At the age of 16, Natasha dropped out of school and started working as a sex worker on the streets of Karangahape Road. However, about a week leading up to her death, she moved in with her parents, and during this time her mum saw her, and she looked at her child and thought, you know, she's looking desperate and she just wasn't entirely herself. She even cancelled her 21st birthday plans, which was on October 17th. However, on Friday, October 18th, that would be the last day Raymond Hogan would ever see her child Natasha Hogan ever again. Natasha's friend Amanda described her to be someone who was fun, generous, and free-spirited. She said that the pair of them would routinely spoil Amanda's kids with clothes and toys. I just thought I should add a bit of a fun fact here. So you know how I mentioned that obviously Natasha Hogan was a sex worker. So as they roamed the streets of Karangahape Road, she was actually in a trio: Amanda, Jane Furlong, and Natasha Hogan. However, 3 years prior to 1996, Jane Furlong, one of the girls of the three, went missing, in which Natasha actually appeared in a documentary in regards to her disappearance, talking about how working on the streets is a risk in itself, and death is just one of those risks these females have to take in order to, you know, to survive, basically. And Jane Furlong's body was found almost 2 decades later after she first went missing. So I would say after 2013, I'm not too sure when, but her skeletons were found in a remote beach after 2013. And I just feel like it is super crazy that Natasha appeared in a documentary about her missing friend, and little did she know that she would be sharing the same fate as Jane Furlong just 3 years later. So back to that night, well, back to the early morning of October 19th, 1996. So at Pigeon Park, after Hayden received what he had paid for, he removed a Jack Daniels belt bucket from his belt, viciously striking Natasha. After his 6th strike, he noticed that she was still alive, clinging onto her dear life. He then tried to strangle her because, you know, he had the intention. He came out this night looking to kill. He wanted to kill. He tried strangling her, but he failed. She was still breathing. And keep in mind, the belt buckle also broke in half. It broke. He then found a nearby rock weighing 33 kgs, picked it up, and slammed it down Natasha's head, crushing it completely. He then grabbed her handbag, walked to his car, got in, and travelled towards west. As he was driving, he went through Natasha's handbag looking for the $60 that he paid for, and then he realised that she had actually put it in her jacket, which was still at the crime scene. Anyways, he drove to the Waitakere Ranges and discarded her bag, and then headed to Piha Beach, in which he washed himself off in the public toilets, sat in the sand, reflected on his actions, and just watched the sunrise. Anyway, Hayden then returned home, which was now a caravan behind Trudy's sister's house, Donna, and he basically washed his clothes and everything and put it up in the line. When Donna actually returned home that morning from her night shift, it was about 7 a.m, she remembers noticing the clothes because she thought, oh wow, like, did he just hand wash his leather jacket? Like, what an idiot. Like, you know, with a jacket like that, you'd want to put it in a washing machine. But never did she actually think that he washed it to get blood off it. Like, you know, you don't think that. On October 19th or 21st, I had a look at different websites, different sources, but I couldn't find the actual date, so please do take this with a pinch of salt. It was either the same morning that she was murdered or 2 days later. Her body was found because a nun was walking through Pigeon Park. She was walking her dog, and that's where they found Natasha Hogan's body. And she called the police, and in which the police, you know, they completely secured the area, now looking for a murderer. And the fear reached fever pitch when days later, the New Zealand Herald, which is New Zealand's basically daily newspaper kind of, yeah, people, received a letter from Hayden, but obviously at the time they did not know it was him, promising that he would kill again, in which he did. Because a week just after Natasha Hogan was murdered, Hayden Poulter walked into the Cleopatra Thai massage, killing 2 workers and nearly killing a 3rd. So I've just got my laptop for this one just because I'm definitely not going to memorize this. But on the morning of the 25th of October 1996, so 6 days after Natasha Hogan's death, the New Zealand Herald received a letter. So it was quite a lengthy letter, and they observed it, and it read, "To all you stupid Fs, I'm writing to you Fs because those pigs do not have an effing clue. I don't even think they can read. I thought they would have caught me by now." So basically, that's just one part of the letter, and it was technically a confession of Natasha's murder. Of Natasha's murder. A police reporter who worked in the newsroom, Roger Wakefield, he thought it was quite creepy but genuine at the same time. In this letter, Hayden bragged about how Natasha was his 4th killer, which I can't verify because as far as I know, Natasha was his 1st killer. I don't know if he just wanted to, you know, write this in to boost his ego. I don't know what it is, but as far as we know, Natasha was his first kill. His first kill. So in this letter, the letter also said it claimed that Satan was telling him to kill all the filthy bees. The letter concluded describing the final murder. "I was covered in blood. It was good. That bee I killed was the best. I like them young. Satan tells me to stop effing around, so if the pigs don't stop me, there is going to be more dead bees. I think I might have to kill a bee pig next. Signed, NBK," in which the police feel like NBK stands for Natural Born Killer. Once again, I can't verify that, but what else would it stand for? I thought about it. I was like, Hayden Poulter, HP. Couldn't think about it, but now it makes a bit more sense to think that yes, it does stand for Natural Born Killer. So yeah, so that letter was received on the 25th of October. So now let's fast forward to a day later on the 26th of October 1996. Hayden Poulter walked into Cleopatra's Thai massage, which was a brothel located on Fort Street, looking for masseuse to massage him. So he walked in and he was greeted by the manager, Herbert Norris, who presented 2 ladies, Lada Nymphet and Ankara Chaisamrat. Sorry, my mispronunciation. If you are Thai and you're watching this, forgive me. My pronunciation, forgive me, but I really did try. And he liked the looks of Lada, so he chose her, and he became her customer. And so he paid $50 for the hour, and she led him to the room. And towards the end of the first hour, Hayden requested that he wanted another hour with her. So she left him in the room, and she went back to make coffee and to book him in which she told Herbert and her colleague Ankara that, you know, it's fine, I feel sorry for him. Cool. So as she went back into the spa room, Hayden pulled out a 16cm army-style knife in which he snuck in, pulled it out, and started stabbing Lada. She started screaming in Thai, "Help me, help me," in which Herbert and Ankara ran outside the spa room, but it was closed. And then suddenly a naked man opens the door, which was Hayden, and he pulls out the knife and stabs Herbert in the forehead, pulls the knife out and stabs Ankara in the chest, back, and upper shoulder area. Despite being stabbed in the forehead, Herbert was still alive, and he started wriggling, and I believe this was probably to find help or to probably reach a nearby telephone. However, Hayden got a hold of him and repeatedly stabbed in his chest and his upper body area before heading back into the spa room and stabbing Lada a further 2 times. He then got dressed and jumped out the second floor window. However, it was quite unfortunate that Lada Nimfit and Herbert Norris did not survive the attack. However, Ankara was rushed to hospital where she suffered deep injuries, but she did survive the attack. At 11:13 p.m. that night, Herbert limped into an Auckland Central Police Station, laid the army-style knife on the counter, which was covered in blood, and requested to speak to a constable about important matters. And notice I said limping because he actually injured himself jumping out the second floor window. He was escorted into a interview room for a videotaped confession. He said, "It started last week. I don't want to keep doing it. I keep on doing it. It's not good. I know it's not good. I know it's not good. I know I need help in some sort of way or another. I done wrong. I suppose it is irrelevant. People don't really care." He also claims that he doesn't remember the week in between the killings, like he just doesn't remember what he did. And he claims that it was his second personality, the one that basically awoke that night, that day Trudy was sentenced to prison. So that second identity, how that was just more bloodthirsty after he had just murdered Natasha Hogan. On the 1st of September 1997, so about 5 months after the attacks, Hayden was deemed sane and pleaded guilty to all 3 murders. 3 days later, on the 4th of September, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a non-parole for 15 years. I'm not gonna lie, I think that's just so stupid. I think it is absolutely ridiculous that you intentionally went out to kill people. Not just one person, not 2, but 3 people, and you could have killed 4, but thankfully Ankara survived. And you get a non-parole for 15 years. So what, after 15 years on good behaviour, you can come back and roam the streets of Auckland, you're just a free person? No, I genuinely feel like if you kill someone, it's life. You should even get life per death that you've committed. But anyways, yes, he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a non-parole of 15 years. He also prepared an apology in which he read in court, which I will read out to you guys. It said, "It's been almost a year and I'm still struggling to come to terms with it all. I'm constantly plagued and tormented with bad dreams. For me, it is a punishment on its own and something I have to live with for the rest of my life. The remorse I have within me is genuine and deep, especially for Natasha, as her life was a lot like mine, filled with abuse and violence. I do not care if no one believes what I'm saying, but I need to say how sorry I am. I am sorry, Natasha. I am sorry, Lada. I am sorry, Herbert. I am so very sorry." Eventually in 2018, 21 years later, Hayden was released on parole because of good behaviour. Even though with his release there was like 100 of things that, you know, he couldn't do, could not do. I don't care, he's out in the streets, he's back into the community, like it just doesn't make sense. So I'll just read a couple of the restrictions that he did have, or the restrictions that he actually had. He included 11 standard parole conditions for life, 15 special conditions for a period of 5 years, with the exception of the prohibition against alcohol and drugs, which would be in place for life. A range of enforcement sanctions are available, including formal prosecution for breach of conditions. The maximum penalty for a breach of parole is 1 year imprisonment. Those conditions included being banned from contacting his victims, the media, or prostitutes. Additionally, Hayden was subject to GPS monitoring, so I believe he had an ankle bracelet. And yes, he was officially released from prison in June 2018. 22 years after being New Zealand's first serial killer. However, on the 27th of August 2018, he was actually called back to prison for details that have not been disclosed to the public. However, there are rumours that suggest that it was because he relapsed on drugs in order to approach a prostitute. I'm not too sure. Take that with a pinch of salt. There are no sources that have actually confirmed why he was called back to prison. And 27 days later, after being sent back to prison, a body was found in Wanganui prison, and this body was of Hayden Poulter. Details of his death have also not been released to the public. But because when it was announced that he died, there was a 0800 helpline in regards to mental health. People are suggesting that it was probably something to do with his mental health, that probably had something to do with his death. But like I'm gonna say again, take that with a pinch of salt, because details of his death have not been disclosed to the public. Hayden Poulter officially died at the age of 57 in the Wanganui prison on the 24th of September 2018. So since the events that led to the murders of the sex industry workers Natasha Hogan, Herbert Norris and Lada Nimfet in 1996, some attempts have been made to protect sex workers, including most notably decriminalising prostitution in 2003 under the Prostitution Reform Act. The change in legislation was controversial, but as Section 3 of the Act points out, the Act's purpose isn't to endorse or morally sanction prostitution, but rather to create a framework that safeguards the human rights of sex workers and protects them from exploitation and promotes the welfare and occupational health and safety of sex workers. And yes, and that is all for today's case. New Zealand's first serial killer, Hayden Poulter. I thought it was actually insane that New Zealand had a first serial killer in 1996, even though we shouldn't, murder is a crime in itself and nobody should be murdering people. But because I study a lot of cases and I'm so into this, a lot of serial killers started in the 1800s or the early 1900s. There isn't a country too safe in the world, not at all. I live here in New Zealand and I feel like I'm safe, but no, as I'm going to be sharing these cases, I'm actually going to be like, oh my god, you can't, there's no way that's safe. Literally, every day when we leave our house, it's a risk in itself. But it is quite unfortunate what happened to Lada Nimfet, Herbert Norris and Natasha Hogan. 3 souls that should have never died the way they did, all because of something that triggered Hayden the day his girlfriend was sent away to prison. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this video today. Like I said, guys, it is my first video, so it was a lot of information. Forgive me if I was looking down quite a bit. Forgive me if I looked nervous. Forgive me if I had my laptop out. I promise you guys I will get better. It was my first time, but I'm so excited to be able to start this series. And let me know in the comments what videos I should do next. If there are cases that you would like me to cover, let me know, guys. But yes, this is something that I will be dropping once a month, maybe even twice a month if you guys are lucky. But I'm super excited, and if you guys made it to this point, to this part of the video, to the end, you guys are real ones. I appreciate you guys. Like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in my next video, guys. Bye.